part of the tour where I think it gets real interesting. As beautiful and grand as that mansion is, that is not the historically significant part of this property. We're entering on the part that's significant. So this is a greenhouse complex, and I mentioned the Philadelphia architect Frank Miles Day, very significant, and you would recognize, he designed in Philly but also elsewhere, and he designed private properties but also a lot of academic properties. So you will recognize some of his work, and one of the ones that's very recognizable because it emulates some of his features is the University of Pennsylvania Museum, Penn Museum. If you remember it, it's got bricks. It has this archway kind of a feature, very similar. He also designed, it doesn't exist anymore, but the original Franklin Field. He designed a bunch of properties there and all over the place. So he is very significant here, and he's an important architect. Part of the reason why we think this place is important is because of the architectural features of this property. So in 1903, House and Garden magazine thought this was an important property to look at, and they did a feature on this amazing looking architecture greenhouse complex. If you go to a website we have, which is growoakwell.com, you will see the history way more than we can talk about, and all the features of just pictures and things, including the pictures from the House and Garden magazine from 1903. And in it, they featured this beautiful complex. If you look at the photos, none of these trees are here except for this white oak. And this white oak is pretty darn big in 1903. And we know the size of the things because I've mentioned that the Olmsted brothers, who in the beginning of the last century were the preeminent landscape architects of their day, their dad, Frederick Law Olmsted, before them was also very significant. His first project was Central Park. So it's a dynasty of experts. And so we know from all the things that we have lots of images, we have photographs, and we have all the landscape design for here and for over at Stoneleigh. And we can see every feature that is accounted for, every bush, every tree. And so we know how big this tree was. 30 inches, I believe.
A little bit under 30, I think.
A little bit under 30, but pretty substantial, because when you look at the photographs, and if you go to growoakwell.com, you'll see it's pretty much that's there, and then this is here. And so this feature up here, and you'll see this also if you look at it, this actually had columns and a colonnade, and we can see the columns. They're down on the bottom. We can see evidence of the columns, and then at the top where you see the little holes in the brickwork, and so probably had wisteria hanging from it, and it was just a beautiful feature with little couches and chairs and things, and you could see that it was a great place to just sit here and enjoy nature. Inside the complex, there were originally 4 greenhouses. There is part of one greenhouse that still exists. What's amazing is inside this part is actually a living space. It's like a house inside here where people live. Underneath there is a very complex basement area, and it actually leads to the other property across the way, which we will go to see, which is the superintendent's cottage. So we think it was all connected. Even in that fragment of the greenhouse, there's like a little tiny bathroom in there. So it's really kind of an amazing complex, evidenced by 1903's House and Garden magazine and this spread that they did on it, which was absolutely incredible. It is not protected. This is a feature that's part of the property that's been taken away by eminent domain. So unknown what will happen to this property, but it's unlike anything that I have seen ever. So it's hidden away. Nobody knew. Who knew that it was here? Nobody. Brice is going to talk about this guy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this guy.
All right, so right here we got yet another white oak. Most of the big ancient trees in the Arboretum section are white oaks, which is interesting because most of the other trees are non-native, and they make the property horticulturally pretty interesting. And I believe that actually, again, if the school district doesn't demolish things here, after the woods in the front, you could actually have a working arboretum back here. There are at least 80 species of tree on the property, and most of them are not North American natives. So that pretty much qualifies it for Arboretum status right there. But the reason this white oak is kind of fun is because this is actually growing by itself, and it always has. And when white oaks are given a lot of space, they go outwards as well as up. And this one, probably not even 100 feet tall, but it's probably close to 160 feet wide, which is what white oaks do. They do it very well. The wood of white oak is incredibly strong, and so it's capable of putting out horizontal limbs 60, 70, 80 feet. You can't do that with like a silver maple or a white ash. It just doesn't happen. Definitely not a tulip tree. Those trees have to grow up, because if they try to grow out, they just break off. So, you know, you'll see a lot of attempts on trees with softer wood, but you'll see a lot of broken branches as well. So this guy has just been loving life in general. It's got, you know, problems. Every tree does. It's had some storm damage. It's had branches taken off. It's got dead wood. But it's standing its ground, and it could probably continue to stand its ground for like another 100 years easy if we just let it. You know, we've been talking about, I've been talking about the size of trees. Usually trees are discussed in terms of the diameter of the stem in inches. And I just thought I'd give you guys the opportunity to see how a tree's actually measured, because it's one thing conceptually to say, okay, that tree is however many inches in diameter, but how do you measure that? Do you get a big set of calipers? Do you get a regular, a carpenter's measuring tape and go around and then divide by pi? No, you use a D tape. This is a D tape, diameter tape, and it's calibrated in pi increments of inches. Usually there's somebody that goes, oh, that's because you remember middle school geometry. And so using this, I can circumferentially measure the tree and get the diameter without having to divide by anything, because the numbers are right here. So what I like to do is actually show you guys and let you shout out how big you think it is. And we use Price is Right rules. So the closest you get to the actual number without going over, you're the winner and you get bragging rights. So how many inches wide do people think this tree is? Just start shouting out numbers.
43.
43, 48,
44. 52.
52. Anybody gonna go with 42? Any Douglas Adams fans here? $1. Thank you. All right, so we got 48 3/4 inches in diameter. So that's 4 feet in diameter. That's a big tree. Not bad.
And so who planted the white oaks?
The white oaks? Well, that's a good question.
This is Stoneleigh.
It's possible that a lot of the white oaks were just wild grown. I don't know what the area of the mansion was used for before they cut off Oakwell and built on it. There might have been just forest there that just happened naturally. It's very difficult to know.